Welcome to this panel focused on the prevention sub-challenge of the Microfiber Innovation Challenge. The theme of this discussion is how we can develop improved textile manufacturing processes to decrease microfiber shedding. I'm the moderator, Kamea Chayne, and our panelists for this session include Georgia, Sophie, and Sylvanie. And I'd love to first invite each of them to give brief introductions to their work, and then also share why you feel that creating scalable upstream solutions for microplastic fiber pollution, as opposed to downstream solutions, is so important today. So Georgia, if you want to start us off.
Hi there. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this panel. Really excited to be part of the launch of this challenge. As a quick introduction, my name's Georgia and I'm an Innovation Manager at Fashion for Good. Fashion for Good is a global initiative based out of Amsterdam that was set up to connect innovators and industry to drive commercial adoption of sustainable solutions at each stage of the supply chain. My role is specifically focused on some of the upstream areas, including raw materials and processing, as well as circular business models and digital acceleration. And essentially what I'm doing is helping to accelerate and drive pilots across those areas of the supply chain, bringing together innovators, brands, manufacturers, and wider ecosystem players to help make that happen.
And Sophie?
Great. Hi there. I'm Sophie Mather. I'm Executive Director at the Microfiber Consortium. We're a relatively new organisation that's 100% focused around the topic of fibre fragmentation from the textile industry. We're a member-based organisation and operate as a non-profit. And where we operate is between deep academic research and bridging that gap with product development at the brand and retail level. So within our remit, within our member base, we have brands, retailers, we have supply chain partners, we have academics and researchers, non-profits and industry organisations. So I'm a textile expert. I've worked in innovation for a long time, and I get really excited about this area because I really feel that the textile industry can innovate considerably against this challenge by going really far back into the supply chain to really look in detail at how we can actually manufacture change to prevent fibres from fragmenting and coming out of textiles. So thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to being part of the panel.
Thank you. And Sylvanie?
Hello. First, I'm really happy to be an advisor and to participate to the challenge of Conservation X Lab. And so I'm Sylvanie Meignié, and I'm consultant in circularity innovation. And my first mission, it's all the material research and development, sourcing fabrics, new innovation on all the process of making fabrics, and also the traceability and the life cycle of the product, so the material. I need to think before of the end of the product, before to start creating new materials. And I work mostly for for brands in sports, so it's a big challenge because we use a lot of plastic. And in factories to develop a sourcing pool to help creators to bring sustainable innovation in them collection.
So to preface the rest of this discussion and to kind of shine the light on the importance of this topic, I'd love to get your thoughts on why we cannot just rely on downstream solutions and we really have to look upstream for this problem of microplastic pollution.
Perhaps I can take a stab at that, if that's okay. So I think what we see at Fashion for Good is you do need to look at solutions across the whole fashion supply chain in order to be able to drive change. But if you're only focused on downstream solutions, you're not really addressing the challenge at the source. And that's why I think that it's really important to also look for innovations in raw materials, in processing, and in manufacturing. If we think about how many materials and products are produced each year, it's not enough just to think about capturing those microfibers through the filters. We really need to be designing to think about addressing this challenge when the product's made rather than at the end point.
If I could maybe just, oh, sorry.
No, good.
I was going to jump in there. I mean, I've worked in innovation a long time, and it's the challenges within the textile industry that really inspire us to make that change. So it's you know, if we don't have these problems, if we don't have these challenges, we're not going to push the dial with regards to new materials and technologies. And I also feel that, you know, as textile experts, we have a lot of understanding where we can actually make that change at this part in the supply chain. You know, we don't need to rely heavily on downstream mechanisms to capture. And we also have to be very aware that this is a global challenge. It's not just one that's affecting, you know, the Western world and areas where we have very sophisticated wastewater treatment facilities, but we need to make sure that whatever we're doing has an effect right across the globe, regardless of country, regardless of cross-section of society, etc.
Yeah, today I think when you develop a new material and a new process also to make your garment, you need to think about all the end of the product, how it will finish, you know, how it will be used. And if you don't think about all these steps of the process, you can't have a complete solution, because every step can impact the end of life of the fabric, of the material.
Yeah, and I guess just due to the nature of microfiber pollution as a problem, it's sort of a problem that is impossible to just deal with downstream and after the fact because of how small these microfibers are. And they're not just shedding when we put them in the washing machine. They might be shedding on a day-to-day basis as we're walking out and about, when we go hiking, when we go swimming and things like that. So it really makes sense for us to be looking to upstream solutions. And before we go into the next question, can someone just jump in quickly to walk us through the steps within textile manufacturing from start to finish, and point out the stages that may have the greatest impact on determining how much a textile may shed or not shed?
Can I maybe jump in here? The Microfiber Consortium created an infographic in the early stages of our organisation, and it was really helpful as we started to map out and work with various different stakeholders. That infographic goes right from raw material at the beginning through fibres, yarns, fabric construction, coloration, finishing, garment manufacture. So it takes every part of the processing chain and looks at, you know, what the impact is from those different stages onto the fibre fragmentation issue. So what we're doing at the Microfiber Consortium is we're taking a huge amount of different materials and yarns in for testing. And I think last count we had about 230 samples, different samples that we've looked at. And what we're doing through that testing is really identifying where the greatest loss is actually coming from. So where we're focusing currently at the moment is fibres and yarns, and also mechanical finishing, where we feel that the initial response from our testing is showing the higher loss.
And to expand upon this, what do we know already works or has a lot of potential in the design and construction process that would make the end textiles a lot more durable and less prone to shedding? And if you know of any current emerging innovations that you're really inspired by, feel welcome to share them as well.
I'm happy to jump back in again, but oh, sorry, Georgia, did you want to go?
I'm happy for you to go, but I was just going to talk about some areas that we find interesting in terms of the processing steps. So these are more general opportunities for innovation, and I think Sophie and the Microfiber Consortium are definitely the experts in terms of which would be most effective in stopping that. But one area we see that's particularly exciting is around plasma. So we split up under processing innovations in consumables and innovations in process, and plasma would fit under innovation in the actual way that a consumable or dye or pre-treatment or finish is applied. So plasma is actually the fourth state of matter, and it's formed when gas is ionized and becomes reactive. And basically this ionized form of gas can be applied to a substrate like a material or a surface to alter its properties. And it can be used at the pre-treatment stage to remove impurities, or it could be used to apply dye stuff to the material, or in the finishing step. and it reduces the water use because it doesn't use any water, and it's also effluent free. So overall reducing the impact in terms of using less chemistry and energy. So I think that's one area that we see as being particularly interesting and a lot of opportunity, where plasma has been applied in different industries, and we want to see how that might be able to be applicable in the textile space as well. Sophie?
No, I was going to say, yeah, microfiber consortium is coming in from a slightly different angle, rather than kind of going straight into the innovation. The research behind what we're doing is kind of informing the direction that we're taking. What I did want to say is, earlier on I spoke about, I think, 230 different samples that we've tested. That seems like a lot, but that's still, you know, excuse the pun, but a drop in the ocean, because what we need to be really careful of is that we've got, you know, substantial data behind any statements that we're making back to the industry. So at the moment, what I would say is the learnings that we're getting from this testing, from this research, will give us initial indications, perhaps not even a trend in some places. What we need to do now is we need to scale that data. We need to scale the research to make sure we've got substantial data behind any statements that we're taking back to the industry. Because what we don't want to be doing is we don't want to be giving wrong information to innovators, you know, because then they'll be making costly decisions, costly developments on data that maybe is not robust. So that's the stage that we're at the moment, is taking our initial work and making sure we can scale it to the next level and really get that robust data. So, you know, we can take it to people like the innovators that George is working with, the supply base that we're working with, and make sure that they've got really strong data on which to inform their innovation decisions.
Yeah, I think it's the most important. It's really all the to be able to quantify from where it releases all this microplastic, and work maybe with, you know, different brands together to find solution also, because we need a lot of data to, and it's not the same between all the fabrics, the blends, the suppliers, the technical. It's so vast, you know, it's so big variety from what it can come from. I think we need already to focus on our actual material, how they release all this microplastic, how we can impact all this step, and at the end work on this new fabric with all this data, but also new kind of process, like to, for example, supplier also need to be able to change, to move the factory to. There is a lot of processing after when you have released an innovation like this, and I think it's also a big step about finding solution, because innovators, they always have really good solution, but we never know if, like, industrial level, it can work. So I think the most important is to bring people together to find the best solution.
Can I maybe jump in with another thought here? Is, you know,
we just touched on this already, but given all.
Oh, now I was just going to say, I think also when we're starting to look at innovation, we need to be very clear as to whether we're trying to reduce and manage the loss through water or the loss through air. And I think that will also indicate, you know, how innovators come together with solutions. I know very much in the early days of this challenge, it was all about what was washing out of a product through domestic washing or in wastewater treatment plants. But what we're finding more of now coming through on research is the loss that's actually happening through air. And that really does make quite a difference when you think about how it's being released and what the implications are for textile innovation.
Well, as we're looking to our innovators for potential scalable solutions, I'd love for you to speak to what sorts of market opportunities you see for this type of innovation going forward. Are there any key trends that you're seeing, and who or what types of companies might be interested in backing and supporting such innovations?
I think what is always interesting across the whole area of innovation is actually if you have a solution that has been applied in another industry, it actually might be suitable for the textile industry. It's just about rethinking it. And I touched on plasma, but we also see innovations in ultrasonic pre-treatment and finishing, and also supercritical CO2, and all of these different ways of basically applying the consumable to the fabric. I think present exciting opportunities for like thinking outside of the box of the normal way of, applying fabric through the manufacturing process. And then we also see at the manufacturing stage other innovations in 3D knit or additive manufacturing that might actually reduce the like microfiber shedding or the waste in the overall manufacturing process. But I know there will be another session that covers it, but I think it's also really important to start at the beginning. What's the raw material? What feedstock is it being made of? How is it being produced? And then moving into this processing step that I just talked about and looking at different ways in which these consumables can be applied to the material before moving into manufacturing. But also thinking holistically, what's going to happen to that material at the end of life? And I think often these new materials that are being produced, sometimes we forget about what chemicals and dyes and finishes are then applied to them before they go out into the world. And when it comes to recycling them, either through mechanical recycling or chemical recycling, I think sometimes it's thinking about what else has happened to that material throughout its journey that might then impact that when it comes to recycling it at the end of life.
Yeah, crossfield, it's the only way really to make innovation. It's you need to bring like different fields together and to inspire, for example, food with permaculture inspired a lot, textile industry, and there is a lot of field more advanced also than textile industry, so that we can take them innovation and include in our factories. So there is a lot of solution what we use actually comes from not textile field. So we need to continue on this, and also we need to train the teams inside all this process to be able to cross field like this, to think about a new generation and how you step back and include all these steps in your designing process.
Can I add in from the TMC member point of view? We've got over 50 members now. The majority of those are brands and retailers. So we know firsthand what is actually happening out there with regards to the brands and retailers, and they're doing a phenomenal job, I have to say, at the moment. So now that we do have a test method that they can use, it's aligned across the globe, we're starting to see a lot of our members do their own testing. And from that testing, what they're able to do is they're able to take their material portfolios and really identify where the bigger losses are coming from, and they can start to work closely with the supply base to make changes. But one of the key things I do want to add in here is it's not a standalone issue. It has to be taken in context with all the other attributes they need from those materials. So, it might be the case that they want to take brushing out of a material, for example, but they can't do that if they need that fabric to be of a certain thermal value. So it's a real fine tuning, and this real kind of textile engineering that needs to go on between the brand and the supplier to make sure that they're not only reducing the fiber fragmentation, but they're also withholding the performance standards that are necessary for that brand and for that activity that they're intending that material to go into. So I think it's a really exciting time for us. And I think what's interesting in this conversation today is not all innovation needs to be extremely advanced innovation, but what we're actually seeing is we're seeing a lot of our members take on board, early stage innovation because they are making material change. And I think that's really important in this conversation as well.
Yeah, with a lot of brand, I work with since 6 years now with brand, and it's just only like 2 or 3 years. There is many ask about like all this question to quantify microplastic, to find solution in new materials, and engineers have really a more important role with designer now. And I think also this gap between technicity and the creative part, it's super important because it's all these constraints allowed us to build better things also. And you applied really good solution already with your system, and this is super important. I see now brands in sport with whom I work, who work on this microplastic quantified solution and process in all the systems. And in sport, it's a really big issue because if we don't use biopolymer, we don't really have like super performant materials for marathon, for people who go in Everest, like activities like this where you need really like durable and strong material with huge resistance, also for firemen, for policemen, and work like this. So it's important to see that we have the problematic between the sustainability and the performance in sport also. So the microplastic problem, it's really important in this field.
I think that's so important and so true, that just because something is more sustainable, it shouldn't be worse performing. And I think that that's definitely something that we are always looking at when we're looking at new innovations. Actually, how durable is that material or process or finish? How does it fit into the existing supply chain? And it needs to also work, doesn't it? Sophie, as you said, you know, these brands and the people who are buying these products, they need to be like meet the standards and requirements of those people that are actually buying their products. So I think it's definitely super important that it actually does what it's supposed to do, and also is hopefully better for the planet as well.
But the brands, they are really like super exciting about this. They are involved to find solutions. So it's an happy job, you know. And now they are able to work together to find solutions for the industry. And this is another way to see fashion that I really like.
And we are coming to a close, but I'd love to just have each of you share your final pieces of guidance for our innovators in terms of what they should keep in mind when trying to design prevention-focused solutions.
Gosh, I want to start by saying, you know, don't look at lots of additive chemicals maybe, which could be more detrimental from a sustainability point of view. I think there's so much opportunity and possibility in the true textile science without needing to add lots of additional processes. I think some of the processes Georgia was talking about are fantastic, and I think they're really going to give some great opportunities here. But as far as just adding chemistry, I'd just be cautious there, because I think we can get there without needing to do that.
I would say be clear on what both the positive environmental impact of your solution is, but also what potential unintended consequences are. I think often in the past, there may have been innovations that have been scaled up without thinking about what the wider implications of implementing that into the supply chain are. So know what your USP is, but also be aware of what maybe the limitations are and what you want to do to address that. And I think if, as long as you have a clear path of what you would want to do to help mitigate any unintended consequences, then I think that's really important.
Yeah, I will give almost the same advice, but yes, you need to have this consideration about all the environment of the materials that you create, all the impact. So you need to know each step to see also like the impact of your fabric, to, you know, be aware about this and know that there is no perfect solution. So in each solution that you will bring, you need to continue to focus to ameliorate. So every time you need to see in which part you need to focus to be better. And also, if I have an advice, it's more, work more together. Brands, they need to associate to find, because we have the same problem. So we need to work together to find the same solution. There is many different problems with this petrochemical fabric. We have microplastic and all this kind of different problem. So we can't find solution alone. So we need to focus together, and we need to have people in the team also who can cross between engineers in a laboratory or with supplier and with the creative team, because I see there is a big gap between this, and it blocks sometimes the innovation and the way to find solutions.
Well, that is a wrap for this panel on prevention solutions. Thank you so much to Sophie, Georgia, and Sylvanie for sharing your expertise with us. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.